Good evening. I'm Gina Roberts, Voter Education Director for the Citizens Clean Elections Commission. As the state's only nonpartisan voter education agency, Clean Elections is proud to sponsor these debates. Our mission is to ensure that you have the opportunity to hear directly from the candidates, ask questions about the issues that impact your life, and head to the polls with confidence. To make sure your voice is heard, please keep these upcoming deadlines in mind. June 22nd is the voter registration deadline, June 24th, early voting begins, and July 21st is primary election day. A quick reminder, all registered voters, including independents, are eligible to vote in the upcoming primary election. If you're watching this debate live, we want to hear from you. You can submit a question for the candidates at any time using one of the following methods. You can email debates@kc-a.com. You can text 480-769-9511 or phone 480-937-1253. Thank you for joining us and for staying engaged in our democracy. For more resources to help you prepare for the upcoming July 21st primary election, please visit our website at azcleanelections.gov. Enjoy the debate.
Good evening, and welcome to the Arizona Clean Elections debate for Legislative District 22, the Democratic primary. I'm Nicole Ludden. I'm a reporter with the Arizona Agenda, and I'll be your moderator tonight. First, you're going to hear from 4 candidates running in the Democratic primary for the State House of Representatives and Legislative District 22 at the state capitol. A 5th candidate, Gwen Johnston, chose not to be here tonight. LD22 is a strong Democratic district that's anchored in Tolleson and West Phoenix, but also includes parts of Avondale and Glendale. Voters in LD22 will elect 1 state senator and 2 state representatives, and tonight's candidates are competing on the same ballot to make it through to the primary. This is an important race because one of the longtime incumbents, Representative Lupe Contreras, is leaving the House, meaning the district will get at least 1 new representative next year. According to recent polling of voters in this district, the issues most on voters' minds are housing, education, healthcare, and water. We'll get to those tonight. Here's how the debate will go. Each candidate will start with a 90-second opening statement, then we'll spend a few minutes getting to know who these candidates are as people. We'll dig into the core issues facing this district, then ask each candidate to explain how they would have voted on a real bill from the session. We'll do a round of rapid-fire questions, and we'll finish with 90-second closing statements. Okay, let's get started. Candidates, thank you so much for being here. We'll start with 90-second opening statements. The prompt is simple. Tell the voters who you are and why you're running. And Veronica, you're up first.
Good evening. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Clean Elections, for hosting. My name is Veronica Bejarano Malone, and I'm running for LD22 because our community deserves experience, accessible, and solution-driven leadership. From 2017 to 2024, I've served 2 terms as an elected council member for the city of Avondale. And during that time, I focused on delivering results and also for our residents and strengthening our community. I've also served multiple regional and national boards, including Luke West Valley Council, the Avondale Contribution Committee, the National League of Cities Committee on Community and Economic Development, as well as the Youth Education and Families. For the Arizona League Policy Committees, Public Safety, Military Affairs and Courts, and Neighborhood Sustainability of Quality of Life. I have over 20 years of experience in education. I have worked with Arizona Department of Education on student funding, ASU's Race to the Top initiative, and the Littleton School District supporting data and curriculum systems. These experiences matters because they show what I've done, not just what I say. I've worked on public safety, education, economic development, and community quality life at every level. And I'm running because I believe government should work for the people. And we need leaders who listen, show up, and focus on real solutions, not rhetoric. If elected, I will fight for strong public schools, responsible growth, water sustainability, public safety, and economic opportunities for working families. I believe in accountability, I believe in transparency, and I believe in delivering results for LD22. Please vote for Veronica.
Thank you so much. All right, Stephen, you're up next.
Yeah, again, thank you, Nicole, and Clean Elections Committee. My name is Stephen Chapman, candidate for the State House to represent LD22. I was born and raised in the West Valley in what is now LD22. It's where I grew up, went to high school, went to elementary school where I played Little League. I've watched this area grow. I've seen the amazing contributions of whether it's our diverse culture, the diverse businesses that move into our community. And so it's important that we have somebody who's seen that, been a part of it, and knows the importance of creating opportunities for more. It's easy to watch the news nowadays and feel like a bystander, and certainly, watching whether it's at the congressional level or even at the state legislature level, it seems like sometimes even our representatives are bystanders to what is happening. That's why it's important to have somebody action oriented. I've served in this community for about 16 years now as a school board member for the Tulsa Union High School District. We've made a lot of significant changes in the 16 years that I've been there. I graduated in 06, got on the board in 2010, and it is a vastly different district than when I started. And for me, it's about taking the solutions-oriented mindset to the legislature. I like to fight for my community, but it's more than just fighting for. You have to put pen to paper. You have to build coalitions with folks on both sides of the aisle, community leaders, community representatives, and get policies done, get budget priorities done. And those are things that I've done for the last 16 years as a school board member representing this district. I've also served at the state level as president of the Arizona School Boards Association, the national level, with engagement in policy discussions, both at the state and federal level. So for me, it's about bringing that experience, bringing that ability to engage with leaders on both sides of the aisle and get things done for our community. So again, my name is Stephen Chapman. I appreciate your consideration and your vote for state legislature in LD22.
Thank you, Elda. Your turn.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Nicole. Buenas tardes a todos. Es un placer estar con ustedes esta noche. Thank you, Clean Elections, for the invitation to participate in this debate. My name is Dr. LD22, and I proudly serve as your state representative for LD22. I was born and raised in Arizona. I'm a first-generation Mexican-American, and I'm proud to call LD22 home for the past 24 years. I'm also the proud mom of 5 children, all educated in public education. I currently serve as a member of the Tolleson Union Governing Board, where my children attend. I earned my bachelor's degree and my master's degree from Arizona State University and my doctorate from the University of Southern California. My professional experience includes program policy development, implementation, and oversight in both nonprofits and public education. Before serving in the legislature, I worked in public education, overseeing social work programming, mental health services for both staff and teachers, as well as overseeing the McKinney-Vento, or the program that supports students experiencing homelessness, and the foster care education program. I also did crisis management for the district that I worked at in the West Valley. My campaign is focused on affordable housing, quality public education, access to healthcare, and economic opportunities for my community. I am driven by a passion to serve and make a positive impact in my community. I hope to earn your vote and allow me the privilege to continue to represent you in the legislature. And my name is Dr. LD22. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, Betsy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Betsy Munoz, and I was born and raised in Arizona within the cities of Tolleson and West Phoenix. I'm an anti-corruption clean elections candidate and a proud product of our local public schools. I've previously worked for nonprofit organizations where I partnered with multiple schools across the valley in supporting our students on their college and career pathway. Within my experience in education, I have seen the gaps in our public education system and its effect on our communities, which is why I am an advocate for more and increased funding for public schools. And in my current role, I do work on helping people with their immigration filings. This issue is deeply personal to me, as I am the proud daughter of immigrants. On immigration, I do want to be clear. There are people in power who want our communities to be afraid, to stay quiet and invisible, but we cannot afford that. There has been so much silence and scandals across our district, and we need someone who is going to speak up for our community, especially at a time when so many are afraid to speak out and need someone who is going to fight for them. Our state is facing a housing crisis as well, as many of our families are not able to own a home. My generation is currently locked out of homeownership. And as economic development increases across the valley, we need to work to ensure our people are having access to jobs with fair wages and benefits. In this fight for our community, I will be a champion for increased funding to our public schools, creating pathways for affordable housing, and ensuring that the economic development across the valley supports our working class families. I will bring expertise to our Democratic caucus at a time when it is needed most because of the attacks on education and immigrants. My aim is to bring integrity back to this office as we need new leadership rooted in community, not chaos.
All right. Thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and move on to our first round of questions. But first, a quick reminder. You can submit a question for the candidates at any time. Email debates@kc-a.com. You can text 480-769-9511 or call 480-937-1253. Okay, this next segment is about who you are, not your policy positions, but what shaped you, how you think, and who you would be once in office. Each candidate has 60 to 90 seconds to answer, and there's no rebuttals in this round. All right, first up, take us back to the specific moment you decided to run. Where were you, what was happening around you, and what pushed you over the edge? And we're going to start with you, Stephen.
Yeah, for me, it's again, we've seen either a lack of action sometimes at the state level, or folks that are putting forward policies and budget priorities that don't meet the needs of not just folks in the LD22 West Valley, but certainly across the state. With the open seat, for me, I saw an opportunity to take the actions that I've been able to do as a school board member in this community and take that to the state legislature. Because again, we are always fighting over education. We're always fighting over housing. We're always fighting over, this and that. But we're not actually getting a lot done. That's where I try to make a difference, is in the getting stuff done. I'm not worried about social media likes. I'm not worried about talking points. For me, it's about focusing on the issues. So I saw an opportunity to put my name forward to the community to continue serving in this capacity as a state legislator. And that's what my promises to the community is to continue not just fighting for our needs, but to actually put down policies, put in budget priorities, and work with folks across the aisle, work with the governor's office, whoever it is, to get things done for our communities. Again, the West Valley is growing. We are a hub for a lot of things going on, and we need to make those investments. We need to get the policies down there done that are going to meet the needs of everyone in LD22. So that's why I decided to run.
Thank you. All right, Elda, you're up next.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I was appointed to the legislature in 2024, and my goal was just to fill the seat for 10 months because it was such a short gap and turnaround time to get those signatures in and get on the ballot. And so initially, we went through the process. We did two processes, so one through the LD and one through a citizens committee, and I was the top vote getter in both of those processes. So I was put up for the position, and I decided to jump in head first and take it. As soon as I got in there, I started hearing from community members and local leaders in my community that I met with that encouraged me to run for the seat. And so I had an awesome support system at the time. Both my seatmate on both sides, the Senate and the House, were very supportive. We decided to slate together, and I decided to run for the seat. Once I got in there, I realized just how broken our system is, just how underfunded our schools are, the attack on our immigrant community, on our LGBTQ community. All of our vulnerable populations are being attacked, and so I decided to run again. So this time I'm running because I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I have the experience. I've already been there at the legislature. I know how the process works. I know that we are in a minority-controlled legislature, and so the work is an uphill battle, but there are definite wins that I can bring to our community, and I look forward to continuing to represent LD22.
Thank you. All right, Betsy, can you take us back to what motivated you to run?
Yeah, so I am a proud West Valley native. I graduated from University High School in Towson and Arizona State University with a Bachelor of Science in Public Service and Public Policy with its concentration in law and policy. So for me, I have previously worked in multiple nonprofit organizations to support and advise our counselors and career specialists across multiple schools within the West Valley on how we can help support our students navigate their college and career journey. And so through that work, I have seen firsthand both the incredible potential of our students and the gaps in our systems that we must improve. And that's why education for me is one of my top priorities. We must invest in our public schools and really ensure that our students have access to the resources that they deserve. This is why I would help advocate for our students at the state capitol, speaking with legislators and pushing to increase public school funding and resources before I ever had decided to run for office. Within my role at the immigration firm, I have seen firsthand how the policies implemented from federal and state standpoint have impacted our community. I've been disappointed in the lack of response from our local leaders, and that is one of the driving forces that motivated me to run. We deserve leaders who will stand with us and for us. Like so many families here, my belief in the promise that if you work hard and stay rooted in your values, you can build a better future. That belief is what brought my parents here, and it's what drives me today. I will be a leader that will speak up and fight for the dignity, protection, and opportunity for all our families through this work.
All righty. Thank you. And Veronica.
Well, I've spent 40 years in Avondale. I've seen it grow. I've had 8 years of being on the council. So I spent years working closely with residents, schools, businesses, and community organizations to help improve the quality of life for families across our community. And what made me run for office was my passion for serving the people and for making sure that everyday voices are heard. I see the challenges families are facing with rising costs, education, housing, infrastructure, and access to resources. And I want to be a part of finding the solution. I believe leadership is about being present, listening, being accessible, and putting the community first. My experience both in public service and working in education has given me a strong understanding of the needs of working families, students, and our growing community. I decided to run because I wanted to continue advocating responsible growth, stronger neighborhoods, public safety, and opportunities that help Arizona families succeed.
All right. Sounds good. We're going to move on to the second get to know you question. Tell us about the hardest period in your life. How did you get through it, and what did it teach you about yourself? And Elda, you're up first for this one.
Yeah, thank you. So I think one of the hardest periods in my life has been dealing with the diagnosis of Alzheimer's for my mom. She was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and so it has opened up my eyes to several things, right? One of those being the disparity that we see in our healthcare system that we need to work to improve access to healthcare, especially for rural Arizona. Especially for our Spanish-speaking community. Having my mom be diagnosed through Alzheimer's and taking care of her has led me to start looking for resources and realizing that we have like a resource desert in Arizona when it comes to dementia and Alzheimer's. We're not putting enough funding into finding a cure or prevention or early detection. And so one of the things that it has taught me is to just change my outlook on life, right? So because my mom has it, there's a chance that I could be a carrier of it. And so it has definitely changed the way I take care of my health and the conversations that I have with my doctor. And so I'm focusing a lot on brain health and keeping myself healthy in the off chance that I am a carrier and it does develop. But I think just the Alzheimer's diagnosis, I have a lot of compassion and respect for families who are dealing with a loved one or a family member who has it, because it literally takes it's all hands on deck to support that family member. And so that's one of the things that I think that has really impacted me and changed the way I see things.
Yeah, thank you. Betsy, you're up next.
I think for me, one of the hardest things I've ever had to go through was with the passing of my mom when I was 14 years old. It really did shine a light to me on the limited resources sometimes our school systems have and our communities have to increase in being able to provide like those mental health supports, right, and its accessibility within our communities. And so for me, that really shaped my outlook on how we can improve upon that and really increase those mental health supports from a school level, but also right across our communities and making it more accessible, because of the fact that mental health is self-care and is healthcare at the end of the day. And so really ensuring that we are looking into the different ways we can increase support and allocate resources to where we can provide it more within our school systems and expand that access. So children across the state, right, who are navigating through a tough time can understand like what is available to them and can be approached with those resources and supports as well.
Yeah, thank you. All right, Veronica. Oh, looks like you're muted, Veronica. There you go.
There we go. At the age of 7, I became an orphan, spent time in different foster homes until my sister turned 18 and took guardianship of me. Those experiences have taught me resilience and perseverance and how important family and community is. At the age of 23 years old, I became a widow, raising my 11-month-old child. I would not have made it through those difficult times without the strength and support of my brothers and my 2 sisters and the community around us. We stayed together, supported one another, and pushed through every challenge. I have called Avondale home, like I said, for 40 years. And those experiences have shaped my understanding of what family and our community go through every day. They taught me compassion, the hard work, and the importance of advocating for people who need a voice. Today, I'm proud to be married to my husband, Terrence. He's a Navy veteran, and together we've raised our 3 boys, and I'm just committed to fighting for our families and the future of the entire LD22.
Thank you. All right, Stephen.
Yeah, I would say recently, and probably, I guess, sort of healthcare related and something I think we all could agree with to some extent is the COVID pandemic was very difficult for all of us personally, professionally. Our community was dealing with a lot. I had a lot of friends that, dealt with COVID, certainly even after the aftermath, family members. One thing I did found like some light in was, especially in our school district community, school districts were still working to feed students and families. We were still providing education. We were still providing a lot of the mental health resources that we provide every single day. It was great because for me, it showed that school districts are the example of government that works. We continue doing all the same things. We alter them drastically, what we do and how we deliver them, but we still delivered those services to families and students across our district. And I saw it across the state, working with colleagues in their states. I also got to see like different ways they were doing things to bring those back. So I think for me, it was like, no matter how difficult situations can be, either personally or professionally, that it's good to have community around you, whether that's family, whether that's friends, or a supportive network.
Great. Thank you so much. We're now going to turn to the issues voters care about most. This will be the core of tonight's debate. I'll ask a question and each of you gets 90 seconds to respond. After all of you have answered, I'll open up a 60-second rebuttal window. You can respond to something another candidate said or add to your own answer. I may ask a follow-up question. First question. You've all cited education as a top priority, so we'll start there. Funding a real teacher raise means finding hundreds of millions of dollars. Where would you find the money? And please be specific. Name the actual line items you cut or the taxes you'd increase to pay for it. And Betsy, you're up first for this one.
So I think for me, when it comes to our public schools, they've been underfunded for several years, especially with the way our current funding structure works at the state legislature. And so for me, I think one of the different things that we can pull in from is really looking at our rainy day fund as well, and looking at how we can provide some support for that to allocate for our public schools. I'm looking at where we are having, where we are looking at in terms of like the budgets for other departments as well, and seeing which schools are in most need, especially because some of our school districts are able to pass their bonds, and some of our other districts consistently are getting voted no when it comes to their school bond and overrides. And so I think one of the things is focusing in on that and also looking into our current ESA voucher program, because there isn't any specific restrictions implemented in the way that we need it to be. It has been draining our state budget, especially. And so that is one of, I think, the biggest things when it comes to public school funding, and in terms of looking and putting in guardrails, really implementing and ensuring that when we're looking at the ESA voucher program, that we're limiting it to ensure that it is going back to its original intent to support our students, and that we are looking into financial accountability for that, and trying to ensure that when we are putting in those guardrails, that we're still protecting and supporting our students at the end of the day who need those supports. And so I think with the ESA voucher program, it's I would say one of the number one things that is straining our state budget, and really looking into that as well.
Okay, thank you. Veronica, you're up next.
Can you please repeat the question?
Yeah. So how would you fund a teacher raise across the state? How would you find those hundreds of millions of dollars, whether that be line items you'd cut or taxes you'd increase to pay for teacher raises?
Well, currently we as a state do not fund our students per student dollar amount, so it's like $3,300. We would need to first go into trying to increase the student pupil amounts per dollar. That would help us get the funding for our teachers, because education is one of the most important investments for our future. And I believe that we have to prioritize the funding for that, but it needs to start with the per pupil dollar amount, because our state probably has one of the lowest per pupil funding per child. If we can get that increase, then not only will we be able to increase that, we could also increase the teachers' budgeting. And as we discuss budgeting, I believe that it's just setting the priorities and being responsible. And I think it has to start with the per pupil budgeting on and getting increases for that.
Okay, Stephen?
Yeah, I think, when we talk about this, it's not necessarily a budgeting issue or a spending issue, it's a revenue issue. Sometimes folks downtown don't want to talk about revenue issues, but that's really what we're talking about is it's taxes and also budget prioritizing for sure. But, we have to look at the Prop 123 renewal. We're not talking about that as much right now. I was an officer with the Arizona School Boards Association when we initiated the capital lawsuit because the state was not properly funding our capital needs, whether it's building new schools or repairing and refurbishing existing schools. We won that lawsuit. Now we're waiting to see how that's going to work its way through the legislative process for budgeting in the future. But we also have to look at how there's this either or mentality sometimes when it comes to spending and budgeting. And we have to start talking about our tax system. We just went to the flat tax rate, which is obviously going to be causing issues for us down the road. And that has to be looked at. And it's a lot difficult more in the state because the thresholds that are now in place for either the legislature or public to increase tax rates moving forward. We also have to talk about ESA and voucher spending. There's no guardrails. There's no accountability on how those dollars are spent or the academic quality of how those dollars are being spent. So we need to make sure that if we're going to give public money, it needs to either go to a public school district, period. We entrust our school districts to do the work for our students and for our families, and that's where the dollars need to go. And then again, on the budget, I mentioned the rainy day fund. I enjoy talking about the rainy day fund because one thing they don't like to talk about downtown is that most of that money was taken from school districts many years ago to create the rainy day fund. So I think it's absolutely appropriate that we talk about some of those dollars being reinvested back into our schools, whether it's for teacher salaries, facilities needs, and any other student programs that are needed across the state.
Okay, thank you. And Elda?
Yeah, thank you. So gosh, this is like the billion-dollar question, right? So I do think that we do need to start off with implementing some stricter guardrails for the ESA voucher program. I think that would be like priority because that would rein in the program, but also set aside some of that funding for our education system. I think the other thing that we need to look at is revisiting the way the formulas that we use currently to allocate money into our public school system. I think it's flawed. I think it's outdated, and I don't think it's been visited and changed for many years. And so the way that we calculate the per pupil for students, we definitely need to revisit that and increase our the amount that we're allocating to our schools. We need to permanently lift the AEL. I think every single year we're constantly going back to like, are we going to lift it? Do we have to extend it for a year or two? That needs to happen. In terms of taxes, and I don't have like the specific line item, but I do think that the flat tax has completely, been chaos for our revenue. In 2023, under the Ducey administration and the Republican controlled legislature, they got rid of the tax rate that we had, where they had different brackets depending on how much you made. And I think that we need to go back to that. I think going back to a systemic way to create revenues, the flat tax is one of the ones that I think we definitely need to revisit, so that corporations and the wealthy can pay their fair share and help fund not only public education, but some of our social services that are in dire need. And so those would be my ideas to start off, and hopefully puts more money into our teachers' salary.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone want to respond to something their opponent said this round? Okay, I'll move on to another education question. Several candidates in this race have ties to school governance, and LD22 voters have seen how quickly school board issues can become community-wide concerns. As state lawmakers, what specific guardrails would you support to improve transparency and accountability in school districts while still respecting local control? Veronica, you're up first for this question.
What guardrails would I put in place for local control? Is that what it is?
Yeah, what specific guardrails would you support to improve transparency and accountability in school districts while still respecting local control?
Let me see here. I just think that we need to probably set the priorities to be responsible with taxpayer dollars. And I know right now the Tolleson School District, the Union High School District, has been having some issues and not being transparent with the community. So I think being more transparent with the community and just making sure that when we're spending the money and we're asking for bonds and whatnot, that they actually use that money to go into the classrooms rather than try to, build out things that are unnecessary for our community.
Okay, thank you. Stephen, you're up next.
Yeah, well, I would say that schools and updated classrooms and school safety are definitely things that our students need and deserve. But as far as accountability, transparency, it's funny when I talk to a lot of folks, school districts are one of the most regulated industry in Arizona. Everything under Title 15 and, a few other titles that mention several other things that school districts deal with. Our budgets are online. They're through the Auditor General's office. You can find them on the Department of Education website. You can find them in our board meeting packets. You can see how much money we're bringing in. You can see how we're spending the money. We do budget hearings. We do revision hearings. We do budget adoption hearings and meetings. It doesn't get much more transparent than that. As far as bonds and overrides, it's same thing. It's anytime we're spending money or bringing money in, that's in our budget. That's transparent to the public. We have public hearings. We actually, in my district, we just did a public budget revision hearing. Folks are able to come in, hear from our staff about how we're spending the dollars, how we budgeted for this year, and they're able to ask our staff questions. I don't see that at the state legislature. I don't see that sometimes at other forms of government, but the school districts, we do that. So it's very transparent. When we go out for bonds and overrides, we talk about how we're going to spend those dollars. And in my district, we spend those dollars how we talk about how we're going to spend them. The last several years, we've asked for bonds to build a new school, refurbishments for other school district facilities. And that's how we've been spending the money and prioritizing it for student and staff needs. And then on the override side, That's money that goes towards things like salaries and programs. And we've been significantly investing into our staff. And again, all those things are transparent and available to see at our board meetings and on several different websites.
Okay, thank you. Elda, you're up next.
Yeah, thank you. So I think two pieces of legislation that I would be supportive of would be for board members to take some type of professional development on school finance. I fully agree that all of these documents are public, but the problem is that people don't know how to read them, and that includes board members. I think it is. We are not CFOs. We did not go to school to be accountants, and so a lot of times as school board members, we're not asking the proper questions. We're not asking in-depth questions that really get to the root of where the money is going and how it's being used. And so I would be supportive as a guardrail to make sure that when you do become a board member, whether you're new or experienced, that you are required to take a school finance course. And I do, like, I've gone to conferences and they will give you like a 45-minute, presentation and breakout. That is not enough. I can tell you that is not enough. And I consider myself to be above average in terms of finance, but there are still things that I do not know. The second thing that I would be supportive of would be for the bonds and overrides, that they have to be more specific when they're going to the voters. We just recently had a bond and override fail in the Towson Union High School District, and I do feel that it was because of the lack of transparency, right? We continue to use the same messaging over and over and over instead of being very specific and outlining like other districts in the East Valley. Well, they will specifically list what that money is going to so that the voters are informed and they can make that decision based on the information that they're receiving in their pamphlets on the bond and override.
Okay, thank you. Betsy?
I think to increase transparency and accountability, I think a big part of that is right that there is a current disconnect between the communication and like what is being communicated to our voters when it comes to like the school board meetings, the budget revision hearings and things of that sort. I think especially in being able to ensure that people understand that they can go to the board meetings and speak out and address these issues. They can go to like the budget revision meetings. And so I think part of it, right, that both like the school board and that we can do as a better job as state legislators too, is communicating that and increasing the accessibility for that, ensuring that we're increasing the awareness on that for how we're reaching out to our constituents regarding those different issues within our school districts. And so I think that's one of the things, right? Sometimes voters also don't understand maybe that they have the opportunity to use like the call to the public as a way to speak out on an issue. And so I think it's part of our duty as representatives to help bridge that gap as well, and working with the school boards and being able to increase the communication and the awareness around the way that a voter can have their voice be heard, right, across all levels, because we want to ensure that they understand it's not just heard at the state or federal level, that it's heard at the local level at the end of the day. And so that is why I think it's one of the key things that is missing is that strong disconnect of like, how can we ensure that we're communicating within our communities of the different ways in which they can have their voices be heard from like right from the local level all the way up to the federal. And so that I think is one of the things that we need to work on both as representatives, as part of a school board, to be able to increase that communication and transparency.
Great, thank you so much. Any rebuttals for that round?
I just have a quick thing just to kind of topple up on what Betsy said. Yeah, you can go to the call to the public and ask for people to go to call a public at the board meetings. But what's happening, and the transparency is not there, if you say something that's out of line at the Towson Union High School District, you are banned from going to their school or to their board meetings. So I have talked to several residents inside the Towson Union High School District that have said they are no longer allowed to go to the meetings in person. They have been told that they are not allowed to be on there. They have to be online. So that's not transparency when I see that as a parent, when my kids go to school. If I'm a community member paying taxes, I should be able to go to the board meetings, and I shouldn't have to be online or be told that I need to be quiet because I'm not agreeing with what's happening in the Towson School District.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead, Betsy.
Yeah, to add on to that, I think that goes back into the education piece that I was talking about, right? So that is communicating around like the rules and procedures for doing call to the public, and it goes back to the school boards as well. Of like, how are you hosting these community forums? Are you expanding out and hosting it at times that are accessible to the community? Are you communicating of like, hey, like this is separate from call to the public. Here's what we're doing on our end, right? And so I think there's different ways in which you can ensure that we're having people's voices be heard and that they are understanding the process. And again, that is back to the education piece of there being a disconnect between them understanding the different ways in which they can have their voice heard and understanding the systems and processes that we currently have in place for them.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Elda.
Yeah, and I will just add to what Ms. Bejarano Malone said. I absolutely agree. I do think that it is also an infringement of people's First Amendment rights on top of it. I have requested that our community members be unbanned, but unfortunately, I'm not in the majority of the Towson Union High School District, and I have not been successful in getting our parents and community members unbanned and able to attend the meetings.
Okay. Stephen, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess we can do the Towson High School District candidate forum here for a minute. I'm not aware of multiple community members that have been banned. We are dealing with a case on one individual that I can't get into. But again, we post all of our meetings that we're going to be meeting social media. We post our meeting calendar ahead of time. Our agendas are posted usually on Friday before a meeting. Sometimes there might be updates that go out on a Monday. Typical case with most school districts. The agenda is obviously through our board docs, which has attachments. So like budget, for example, if we're talking about budget. I've actually taken an extra step with our superintendent over the last 6 or 7 months, where we're actually doing an agenda preparation video before each of the board meetings to kind of go through what we're going to be discussing. And sometimes if it's like a new or like a bigger category, we'll talk a little bit about what that item is so the public is aware prior to the board meeting. So if you're going to the meeting and you watch that video, you've probably heard about the topic at least twice now, so you can at least understand what's being discussed. If you have any questions, you can email those in ahead of time. When we have our board meetings, we also have our public comment section. We do our budget revisions. We have 2 separate forums there, one for folks that want to comment or ask questions during the budget hearing, as well as folks that want to do regular public comment, and you can do both. So again, I guess as far as like school districts generally, can some school districts can any school district do better on communication and engagement? Absolutely. I'm not saying that that's not the case. I'm just, my case is that there's often this idea that school districts are hiding how they do things, and that's just not the case. Not every school district is always easily accessible depending on their resources. Not every school district has significant, amount of staff to dedicate to building out a website, to hosting, live board meetings through YouTube. That's something that, fortunately, because of the support of our community, the Towson High School District is able to do. But again, those are things that I want to take to the legislature to make sure that other school districts are able to pay their teachers the way that we do, or invest in resources for their staff and students and for their community the way that my district does.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next question. Arizona has a housing crisis, and Democrats don't all agree on what's driving it. What's your diagnosis for who or what is primarily to blame, and what's the first bill you'd push to address it? And Stephen, you're up first for this one.
Yeah, I think there's obviously a lot of things that are contributing to housing. Obviously, we've seen a lot of tariffs coming from the federal government, instability with federal economic policy, random wars or events, as our administration likes to call them, depending on the week. So those things definitely have an impact on the market. And then obviously, in addition to costs for products and goods, cost of service, because we should be paying folks a reasonable wage to build houses, to build apartments, to build affordable housing. As a member of the state legislature, one that I like to focus on is working with colleagues to find ways to invest credits to make sure that we're building not just affordable housing for like apartment units and multifamily units, but also like housing that people can eventually own. Because that's the other piece, that sometimes we forget in the mix when we're talking about affordable housing is, the dream of actually home ownership. So those are things that I would want to work as far as budget priorities, because if we're going to offer tax incentives to corporations and businesses, they should be benefiting the people of Arizona. They should be benefiting people in the West Valley. So those are the things that I would work on when I get there. I think there's just a lot of other economic, issues in there. I think one of the bills that you actually sent us in regards to how cities regulate the construction of housing and things like that. Those things also, add to housing costs. If they have to add these 10 items on there, but maybe a resident wants to move into that area, only wants 3 of those, they're still going to have to pay for those other 7. So there's a lot of things that we can look at from a policy and a budgeting standpoint to make sure that folks have access to an affordable place to live.
Okay, thank you. Elda?
Yeah, can you repeat the question?
Yeah. What's your diagnosis for who or what is primarily to blame for Arizona's housing crisis? And what's the first bill you'd push to address it, or, if reelected?
Yeah, so I do think that there are several factors that are driving the unaffordability in our community, and specifically to houses. I do think that we need to sit down with our corporations because sometimes they will tend to pull permits for housing and then hold on to those permits and not actually build the housing because the market's not favorable to their shareholders, right? And so I think that both at the state level, we need to take a look at that, and then we need to have our municipalities that we work with continue to push, because if we do have a shortage of housing, just in general, we need to get the housing moving. I also feel that we do need to increase our wages, right? Because right now our families, younger generations cannot afford a house. And so I think it's important that we increase wages in order for them to be able to not be pushed out of the market. One of the first bills that I would push if I come back, I think I would be comfortable sitting with my cities that I represent and coming up with some legislation that does not allow, like I said, our corporations to hold on to permits and not build the housing until it's favorable to their shareholders, because I think that pushes the prices up and then they're controlling the market. And I don't think that that's beneficial to my community.
Okay, thank you. Betsy, you're up next.
In terms of housing, this is one of the issues that I strongly connect to as well, especially because I'm coming from a generation that is locked out of home ownership and being able to live the American dream and build that wealth, right? And so for me, I think one of the things we really need to look at is how we can invest into first-time home buyer programs, how we can expand those out, and ensuring that we're addressing the issues when it comes to the corporations and the permitting issue. Also looking into how we can provide mental health supports and looking into substance abuse programs as well for those who are currently do not have a home or do not have any stable housing right now. And so how can we increase that support within our communities, right? And so those, I think, are some of the key ways in which we can address the housing affordability issue, especially because so many within my generation can't afford to go out right now and own a home. And so that is one of the things that we need to look into, is investing into increasing our housing supply and the ways in which we're doing that, and what kind of protections we're assuring when it comes to that for our communities. And then also looking into how we can increase mental health and substance abuse programs, especially for those who currently don't have a home and who are struggling and who need our support as well. And so those are some of the things that I think we can look into.
Okay, thank you. And Veronica.
Thank you, Betsy. Great answer. I think you said diagnose the issue, right? And solve it?
Correct. Yep, you got it.
Perfect. Arizona has the housing crisis. It's been driven, I think, by rising costs, limited housing supply, and wages that are not keeping up with the cost of living. So we have too many working families, seniors, teachers, first responders, and young adults that are not able to afford to live in communities that they live in. They're being priced out. So in many parts of Arizona, corporate investors are buying up our homes. They're making it harder for local families to compete. At the same time, we have not built enough affordable workforce housing to meet the needs of our growing population. So during my time at the Avondale City Council, I worked on the solutions to address housing affordability inside the city. We partner with Trellis and local nonprofit community developments organizations to help build affordable housing opportunities for working families. So that would be something I would try to look at when I'm if elected, because I think that collaboration, and we can bridge the housing issues that we currently are seeing in Avondale or Arizona, actually. I just believe that Arizona needs practical, community-focused solutions that expand affordable housing, support responsible development, and create pathways for home ownerships while addressing the issue.
Okay, thank you so much. We're going to round this out with a water policy question. Would you vote to impose mandatory water restrictions on Arizona households, things like lawn watering limits, per person usage caps, higher prices for heavy users, and so on, even if it means your constituents have to rip out landscaping they've had for decades? And Elda, you're up first for this one.
Thank you for the question, Nicole. I think this is one where building that relationship with your municipalities is very important because they know their communities the best, right? I represent several communities, Goodyear, Litchfield Park, Avondale, Tolleson, Phoenix, and every municipality has different rules and regulations. And I think it's important for us to have those conversations with those cities that we're going to be working with in terms of protecting the water. I think one of the things that I would push would be to ensure, like some of my cities, that they do have like a 100-year water plan, right? I think it's important for us to push water conservation. I think it's important to push water education. And I think that it could be like a multi-tiered approach where we're not going full-blown in first and just like limiting and voting to remove all of that. I think that it could be staggered to where if we reach this milestone and we're not conserving enough water, then we might need to move to a more drastic approach. But I think starting off, a little bit less, water is important, don't get me wrong, but I do feel that once you start infringing on people's rights and, their home, we can definitely see a lot of pushback. And so I think it's going to take a lot of stakeholder meetings to get to a place where we can have those conversations. But I'm thinking of like a multi-layered approach where we can start pushing some of these things, educating our communities, and if those things don't work, then get a little bit more aggressive in terms of like building up to that vote of yes, let's limit the water or no. And at this point, I think that I would probably not be comfortable voting on removing all of the homeowners' rights until we have those conversations with our municipalities.
Okay. Betsy, you're up next.
I think there is multiple strategies in which we can address, right, our water usage and how we're protecting water as a natural resource. I think one of the key ones is really looking at how we can create like a separate class, right, especially for separate class of like categories for those, especially those who are primarily using a lot of water. Prime example of that would be our data centers, right? And so ensuring that when it comes to like addressing like the rates for our communities and things of that sort, that we are looking at who is primarily like using up our water. Are we ensuring that we're creating legislation to ensure that we are preserving it as much as we can? So just through, for example, with the data centers, ensuring that we're creating like a closed water loop system, right? And so really taking it from that kind of approach into where we can conserve our water and look at the different strategies into where we are mitigating the impact of how much our water is being used up and how we can ensure that we're conserving it in the ways, in the different ways that we can, depending on who is consuming it, how much you're consuming it. And so looking at it from that angle, I think is critical, and working with multiple stakeholders in that effort as well, right? So ensuring we're hearing from different groups, hearing from our constituents, and the feedback from them regarding the different ways in which we can approach it as well.
Gotcha. So would you support on the household level water restrictions?
So I think for me, it's critical to really look at like what is driving up our water usage. I think a big part of that, again, is the data centers, right? As an prime example of that. And so looking at creating that separate category to ensure that we are not having this effect go down back to our constituents in the same way, especially with the difference in terms of water usage in that sense.
Okay, thank you. Veronica, would you vote to impose mandatory water restrictions on Arizona households?
Arizona, currently that's the challenge. Arizona is a desert state that we must balance the growth and limited water resources. If we don't plan carefully, we risk higher costs, stricter cuts, and long-term impacts on both family and economic development. I think what we need to do is kind of we need a combination of solutions. We need to first prioritize conservation and efficiency and requiring smarter use in both the residential and the commercial development. Secondly, I think we need to expand and reclaim and recycle water systems so that we can reuse water for landscaping industries and recharge instead of relying on the freshwater supplies. So I think the strong groundwater management and long-term planning with rural and urban areas are protected from that. So I know that in the city of Avondale, what they do is, because we are water conscious, we have a plan. So we always invite people to come out and be a part of learning how to just conserve the water, do landscaping, desert landscaping and stuff like that. So I wouldn't want to just come out and say I would be supportive of that, because I'm not.
Okay, thank you. And Stephen.
Yeah, I wouldn't vote yes on a bill like that. Currently, I think that, we would need to take a lot of time to investigate issues. We talked about, a 100-year plan for communities, whether it's new development or existing developments. The state needs to work with our municipalities, our developers, and other industry to make sure that that when we're putting water lines into new houses, the way we're utilizing water in existing neighborhoods, that we're doing so as the best way possible. Water conservation is a major issue, obviously, in Arizona being a desert. But I think one of the issues that we see constantly is either bills get kicked down the road, or there's a lack of long-term planning. This is one of those areas where the state legislature, the governor, and other industry folks need to come together on long-term solutions, and not just year-to-year plans, year-to-year budget priorities, a random bill here and there. There needs to be a concerted effort with cities, especially like rural and remote areas, on how we're going to deal with water usage moving forward for existing communities and future communities. Can it be tax incentives for folks who are changing their water habits, similar to how obviously we have solar that reduces rates and things like that? Are there other incentives that we can utilize for folks when it comes to water without infringing on their rights? So when you can turn your sprinklers on, or when you can wash your car and things like that.
Okay, thank you so much. We're going to go ahead. Oh yeah, go ahead, Elda.
I just want to add, and I think it's important for us to know that, or to mention that our governor is working very hard to conserve water and to obtain rights to the Colorado River. I don't think it's fair to say that we're not doing enough. There is work happening behind the scenes. As a matter of fact, right now, the lower basin states are almost close to an agreement which would secure water for Arizona. I do think that it is an effort that requires not only our upper basin states, our lower basin states, but also our tribal communities and Mexico to come to the table to create a solution that's sustainable, to preserve and keep an eye on our water, because it is precious and we need it.
Okay, does anyone want to add to that? All righty, we're going to go ahead and change gears here. Before tonight's debate, each candidate received 5 actual bills from this legislative session. I've picked one to ask about tonight. I'll read a short summary of the bill. Each of you will have 1 minute to tell the voters 2 things: how you would have voted and why, and there's no rebuttals this round. So let's talk about SCR 1020, legislative pay raises. You've all hopefully read the bill, but here's the layman's version. The bill would automatically increase lawmaker salaries annually rather than having to ask voters for pay raises. And we're going to go ahead and start with you, Betsy, about 60 seconds.
Yes. So while I do think our legislators desperately need a pay increase, especially as they currently are paid at $24,000 a year, I think right now during times of economic crisis, we really need to focus on ensuring we're addressing the needs of our constituents when it comes to looking at such as how we can bring in more higher paying jobs with benefits, especially because some of our families are currently struggling. Looking how we can expand the first time home buyer programs and increasing the housing supply in that effort. And having increased investments and resources provided to our schools as well, right? To address the needs that are and address the needs of our constituents and the focus of that. And so that to me is where my focus would be. And that is what I will be advocating for at the state legislature. I do understand the need for a legislative salary increase, especially with where they're currently at. but I think it's focusing on addressing the issues of our constituents currently, especially during this crisis right now.
Okay, thank you. And Veronica, how would you vote on this bill?
That one's a little tough. I believe that the current compensation structure makes it difficult for many qualified and dedicated individuals to serve like long term, especially those who don't have independent financial resources. So I know that we've seen many strong leaders leave the legislature because they cannot earn the livable wage while serving. But I would not support that, only because we have so many families that are currently struggling with rising costs of living, including housing, groceries, gas, healthcare, and increasing water bills and whatnot. So I would vote no.
Okay, thank you. And Stephen?
Yeah, I think that this is an interesting bill. It has the potential to, at least for the first year, drastically increase the pay for legislators. But I think the important thing is this goes to the voters. There's some pieces in there I probably would have changed myself, but I would be fine with it going to the voters to get their feedback on this. I mean, obviously, we've had one not too long ago for just like the regular commission pay increase. And maybe that's something to look at down the road is how that's actually done. But my priorities are more than just legislative pay. I'm focused on how we're paying folks that are working hourly jobs across the state, how we're paying folks who are even working salary jobs that, sometimes overtime rules don't cover. But I think at the end of the day, if you want a diverse legislature, if you want folks that are capable and know their stuff to be down there, that you're going to have to attach some sort of livable salary, even though this is supposed to be a part-time job. That means folks are taking time away from either the regular job, or they're able to work two jobs at the same time. But again, if you want folks that are down there dedicated to the work and not dedicated to just finding money from lobbyists and other groups like that, like you have to put something that's a little bit reasonable for somebody to live off of. Average income in Arizona is
We're running up on 60 seconds here if you want to wrap that thought up.
Yeah,
okay.
this would still be below the average income for Arizonans if this were to increase. So again, it's about focusing on the people.
Okay, thank you. And Elda.
Yes, thank you for the question. So I would be a no on this. I, like many Arizona families, live on a budget, and I have my family budget, and I knew when I decided to run that this was quote unquote considered a part-time legislature, even though the time is not part-time. I knew that I signed up for that. And I do feel that at a time when affordability is on everybody's mind, it seems just out of touch to try and push a raise for legislators when we kind of knew what we signed up for, in my opinion. More concerning, I see like the Republicans trying to raise insurance for state employees, right? That to me is a huge concern. So I would rather be fighting for my constituents to make sure that their healthcare stays at an affordable price, that they can afford food, that they can afford gas. My pay is not should not be the focus, or legislator pay should not be the focus of our session. So I would be a very strong no.
Okay. Thank you so much. We have time to squeeze in one more round here before we move on to closing statements. We're going to do a rapid fire round. These are yes or no questions, 15 seconds each. You can add a short reason if you want, but try to keep it tight, please. Okay, first up. If Donald Trump were impeached and JD Vance became president, would America be better off or worse off? Veronica?
Worse off.
All right, Stephen?
Yeah, either the same boat or worse, probably.
Okay, and Elda?
Yeah, I think we would definitely be worse off. I think, Donald Trump is hopefully on his way out. JD Vance is barely getting started, and I would really worry about the damage that he can do to our country.
Okay, and Betsy?
I also think we would either be in the current boat that we are in now, or we would be worse off, especially considering the fact of the policies that I think the administration would continue to implement across the board. And so I think our focus really needs to be on shifting, pushing back and fighting back against that.
Okay. Next up, who's a better senator in your opinion for Arizona right now? Mark Kelly or Ruben Gallego? Stephen?
Wow. I mean, I think they've both been pretty effective. Over the years, I've gotten to know both of them a little bit. You know, I'm a space person, so I'll just say Mark Kelly because he's an astronaut.
All right. Elda?
That one is tough. I'm going to have to go with Mark Kelly only because he has really been putting up a very strong fight against this illegal war that we are in that did not get Congress approval. And he has put his line, his retirement on the line to fight for what's right.
Thank you. And Betsy?
I think that is a difficult one as well. I think for me, it would definitely be Mark Kelly in terms of like the different lens and perspectives. He's been able to provide from like the different ways he's held office, as well as to support different efforts within our communities here in Arizona. And so, especially with how he's been pushing back against our current administration right now with the policies that they're trying to implement, I think says a lot about how he really is being rooted and trying to focus in on our community.
Okay. And Veronica?
I would also stay with Mark Kelly. That's a hard choice, but Mark Kelly has been pushing back against the administration. He continues to let them know that he's a fighter for Arizona, and that's what we need is a fighter for Arizona and keep truth to power.
All righty. We're going to do one more here. True or false, Katie Hobbs is too moderate. Elda, you're up first for this one.
True. I think it's an election year, and she definitely needs the independents, and so yes, the independent voters. So yes, she is true. That's your statement is true.
Okay. Betsy?
I would say true, but I would say that I also understand the limitations that with our current legislature being that we are in the minority currently, and so I do think that there is some things that the governor is unable to do as a result of that, and so I think that's where it does help push her into that category as well.
Okay. Veronica, is Katie Hobbs too moderate?
Yeah, I would say that she's a little bit too moderate, especially on the election year, and that she is. We have the majority going for the Republicans, and she's got her hands tied.
Okay. And Stephen?
Yeah, again, yeah, I think definitely moderate, but I mean, yeah, we're governing with a House and a Senate that's controlled by one side, and executive branch that's controlled by the other. So, like, sometimes the only way to get anything done is going to be working in the middle to try to work with the folks that are trying to bring common sense solutions. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. That was our last round of questions, and that means we've reached closing statements. Each candidate will get 90 seconds. The order is the same order as your opening statements. So, Veronica, you're actually up first if you want to go ahead and give your closing statement.
Perfect. Thank you. During the deep political division, I have built a bipartisan record focusing on delivering practical solutions for Avondale families, now Arizona families, and as a former vice mayor of the city of Avondale, I've worked to invest in safer streets, parks, housing, and homeless initiatives because I believe that leadership should be about improving people's everyday lives. Our district deserves leadership that focus on addressing the rising cost of living, strengthening public education, protecting our water future, and creating the safe communities. Not wasting the taxpayers' dollars on any scandals or distractions. I want to bring real democratic representation back to the LD22. This representation will be on focus on getting the work done, listening to our community, and delivering results. I am asking for your support because I will continue to fight for families and advocate for our community and lead with integrity, accountability, and compassion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Stephen, your closing statement, please.
Yeah, again, thanks to the Clean Elections Committee for putting this on, and all the folks out there watching us live or recorded later. Again, I've been serving this community for 16 years. In that time, we've been able to do some significant things in our school district. We have we have the highest paid teachers, classified staff members across the state. Our letter grades are on the rise. Our student academic success, extracurricular success is on the rise because we made specific strategic plan goals and specific budgeting priorities. Those are the things that I want to take to the legislature. We talk about housing. We need to create incentives and policy that promote affordability, that make sure that when folks are building houses, that they're building them with cost in mind so that folks can afford them. And again, it's just about getting stuff done. I'm going down there not just to fight, but to put pen to paper and to draft policies and put budget priorities together that work for our West Valley LD22 community and for the citizens of Arizona. I ask for your vote this July to continue representing this community. It's always been an honor to serve on the school district. I ask for the honor to serve in the legislature because, again, we need somebody down there who's focused on getting stuff done and working with anybody to create policies that are going to work for our LD22 community. Thank you.
Thank you. And Elda.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole. Under this Republican legislature, LD22 is under attack, right? Our public schools are underfunded. We're facing a housing crisis. Everything from women's rights to immigrant rights to LGBTQ rights are under threat. I'm committed to protecting our most vulnerable in our community. I'm committed to fighting for our working families. I want to ensure that every person in LD22 has the opportunity to succeed. I was raised in a Spanish-speaking mixed status household, so I understand firsthand the fear that our immigrant families are facing, including our DACA students. I will always fight to protect our most vulnerable. As a bilingual legislator serving a majority Latino community, I am proud that I'm able to speak Spanish with my constituents and build that respect and understanding when I'm knocking at the doors. I think language and culture are important in my community, and I'm happy to continue to honor that part of my community. My parents didn't have the opportunity or the privilege to vote, yet they instilled in me the importance of getting involved, of serving community, of voting. And so to me, like, civic engagement is very important, not only for my own children, but for the generation that's coming, because those are the ones that are going to help change the legislature that we currently have. I strongly believe that just because you don't have a voice doesn't mean that you shouldn't have somebody, or don't have the ability to vote, you shouldn't have somebody being your voice for you. And that's where I feel that I can come in, right, for our immigrants that aren't able to vote. As a member of the minority party in the legislature, it's especially important for me that I ensure that all of my community voices are heard. And I am completely committed to working hard for my LD. My sleeves are figuratively rolled up, and I'm ready to continue to use my expertise and my experience to bring affordable housing, quality education, economic development, and access to healthcare. So my name is Dr. Eldaluna Nájera, and I respectfully ask for your support and your support and your vote in July. Thank you.
Thank you. And Betsy.
So during a time when people are really struggling to make ends meet and to have a roof over their heads, I really do understand these issues deeply and personally. I know firsthand that our generation is locked out of homeownership, that we need higher paying jobs with benefits, and that we need increased supports and resources to our public school system to expand the opportunities available to our communities. And so for me, I am unapologetic in my progressive democratic values. And we've seen major wins from working families across the country when Democrats put their trust in young progressive leaders who provide a new perspective rooted in today's reality. I am a clean elections candidate, and I don't accept corporate PAC money, unlike some of my opponents. And so right now is a time to have a leader who will speak out and fight, not hide away due to scandals. And so as the proud daughter of immigrants, this fight is personal to me, and I will use my power to stand up for our community and those who are most vulnerable.
Okay. Thank you so much. That concludes tonight's Democratic primary debate for Legislative District 22. Thank you so much to all of our candidates for being here, and thank you to all of our voters for tuning in and informing yourselves ahead of the July 21st primary. For official voter information, you can visit azcleanelections.gov. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.